the debt ceiling, I'd like to make a comment. The last time Congress dealt with the debt ceiling was in the summer of 2019. 27 Senate Republicans voted to raise the debt ceiling. So did I. So did, with a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. More than 40 of my Democratic colleagues joined me and others to vote to do the right thing for our country. There was such little concern about the debt when my colleagues passed the $2 trillion tax cut giveaway to the wealthy and corporations in 2017. Senator Toomey and I both sit on the Finance Committee and had those debates. They just weren't concerned in those days. And I would reiterate, as Secretary Yellen in the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office have affirmed, that this bill is in fact paid for. Secretary Yellen responded to greatly detailed questions with the answer to that, and we heard it. Now Republicans would rather hold our full faith and credit hostage than pay the bills that they've racked up, perhaps that we've all racked up, and that's not acceptable. One final point on inflation. Just this morning, Bloomberg released a story where the headline pretty much says it all. Fattest profits since 1950, debunk wage inflation story of CEOs. Fattest profits since 1950, debunk wage inflation story of CEOs. The FDIC also just released its quarterly report, shocking no one. Bank profits are up. The idea that these corporations can't afford to pay workers higher wages that actually reflect the value of the work they do to make these companies profitable, is ridiculous. They want the Fed to pull back. Let's be clear, by pull back, by tapering, what they really mean is they want fewer jobs available. That's what happened after the last crisis. The Fed pulled back to its support too soon. Some families never recovered. We can't make that mistake again. For senators who wish to submit questions, for the record, they're due 1 week from today, Tuesday, December.
Senator from Ohio.
Is the Senate a quorum call or no?
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I have a message for Ohio voters. My great state of 12 million people. To Ohio voters, to parents, I say, check your bank account. On Friday, most Ohio parents, the parents of more than 2 million children, 92% of children in our state, the parents of most Ohio parents once again saw $250 or $300 or $600 in tax cuts directly deposited in their bank accounts, or maybe they got the check in their mailbox. To parents, I say, we know how hard you work at your jobs, at raising your children. Any parent knows how much work it is to take care of children, especially young children. I'm the lucky, proud grandfather of 8 grandchildren. I watch my children. 5 of our grandchildren live in Ohio. 3 of them live out of state, not too far away. I watch them. I watch how hard they work, how difficult it is to take care of young children. And it's only gotten harder, as of course we know, over the last year and a half. So often I say to these parents, your hard work doesn't pay off like it should. We've seen what happened over the past few decades. Productivity goes up, stock prices have soared, executive compensation is off the charts, yet wages have barely budged. Meanwhile, you know how expensive it is to raise children. Health care and school lunches, diapers, clothes, school supplies, braces, sports fees. The list never seems to end. One of the biggest expenses, of course, for so many families is child care. Parents feel like they're stuck. The more they work, the more expensive child care is. You feel like you can't keep up no matter how hard you work. It's why we passed the child tax credit, the largest tax cut for working families ever. It's about finally making your Ohio parents, your hard work pay off so you can keep up with those extra expenses that keep coming when you're raising a family. Stories pour into our office from parents from Sandusky to Portsmouth, from Ashtabula to Middletown and Hamilton, from Toledo to Gallipolis. Stories we hear over and over about these tax cuts, stories about how expensive child care is, how parents are using their money to afford child care so they can go back to work, or in some cases work overtime. Kristen of Columbus said she's using this to pay for daycare for 2 kids at $600 a week. Brittany said daycare. Ellie said daycare. Alex in Cleveland. Every penny goes to daycare. 4 kids in daycare. $800 a week. These tax cuts mean more parents are in the workplace. They can afford to go to work. It's that simple. And let's be clear. Getting $300, getting $600 a month per child in tax cuts doesn't discourage anyone from getting a job or doesn't cause any of them to quit. I'm going to leave my job that pays $30,000 a year because I'm getting $3,000, said no one ever to us. There's no way you can afford to raise a family in that. You still need a job. These tax cuts help parents afford that job. It's all about dignity of work. I can't count the number of families that said, you know, I said on this floor a few minutes ago, Mr. President, that 25% of renters in this country spend half their income on rent. So we know how anxious those families are the last week of the month. And one of the things I've heard, perhaps more than anything else about this child tax credit, the last week of the month, we don't have to deny our kids dessert, or we don't have to cut something else because some of that anxiety has been lifted off our shoulders because we're getting $250 per child in the child tax credit. It makes a huge difference in just their lives. As I said, it's about the dignity of work. All work has dignity, whether you punch a clock or swipe a badge, whether you work for tips, whether you're on salary, whether you're caring for children, whether you're taking care of a sick parent. Raising children is work. Raising kids is a hell of a lot more work than moving money from one overseas bank account to another, or than checking your balance in your stock portfolio. That didn't stop Mitch McConnell from rewarding the wealthiest CEOs and hedge fund managers and Swiss bank account holders. We remember what happens. We look down the hall at Senator McConnell's office, just 100 feet or so down there, and you see, particularly 3-4 years ago, you saw the lobbyists lining up there as he was doling out to the wealthiest CEOs and the hedge fund managers and the Swiss bank account holders and the politicians doing their bidding, pass that tax cut for the wealthy and for corporations that outsource jobs. Don't think a lot of those CEOs didn't outsource jobs, take the tax cut, outsource jobs, set up manufacturing in those countries, sell back into the United States, and then as they took part of the tax cut and did stock buybacks to make themselves even richer. All Senator McConnell and the leaders in this body all knew that's what that was all about. But when it comes time for a tax break for families making $10 or $20 or $50 or $75,000 a year, they're absent. We know that it was a partisan vote. Every Democrat voted for the biggest tax cut in American history. Every Republican voted against the biggest tax cut in American history. Fortunately, there are more of us than there are them. It was 51-50. They promised their tax cuts for the rich would trickle down. We know they never do. They keep the money for themselves. They spent that money on stock buybacks. Now, as I said, without a single vote from Republicans, and I don't like to be partisan around here. I represent a state that leans Republicans. A lot of Republicans vote for me because I work with them and want them to succeed, as I want everybody to succeed. But we also know this tax cut shows whose side are you on. It's a pretty simple contrast. Are you on the side of workers, or are you on the side of these big corporations that outsource jobs? Do you want tax cuts for billionaires and decamillionaires, or do you want tax cuts for working families? As overwhelmingly Americans from all over the country, from all kinds of backgrounds, agree with that. Everyone is lining up behind extending the child tax credit expansion, the faith community, the civil rights community, the children's advocacy community, Catholic Charities, Bread for the World, Results, the Coalition on Human Needs, Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the Children's Defense Fund. So many others are writing us in the last week in support of keeping these checks going, in support of extending the child tax credit 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, making it permanent. Because, Mr. President, every single month we show parents and workers we're on your side. So count on it. Started in July 15th, first check. A month later, mid-August, second check. A month later, mid-September, third check. Just last week, the fourth check, $250 if your child's is between the ages of 6 and 17, $300 per child if your child's under 6. It's been like clockwork. It's made a difference. 2.3, we haven't quite reached everybody in my state. 2.5 million children eligible. We've reached 2.4 million. We've reached about 2.3 million of them. So we're still working to find those other parents that don't know about this for their children. But think of what that's done for 92% of my state's children. 92% of the kids in this state, in my state, their parents are benefiting from this. One man said to me, you know, for the first time ever, I can buy my daughter fast-pitch softball equipment. The same meeting, a mother told me, you know, for the first time ever, my son can go to summer camp now, first time ever. Other parents were talking about child care. They were talking, one family said, you know, if we can put aside $100 a month so my daughter can go to Sinclair State Community College or maybe the University of Dayton or maybe Ohio University. Other families talked, as I said, Mr. President, about rent, that the anxiety they feel at the end of every month to come up with that rent check so they don't get evicted. Every single month we're showing parents, we're showing workers we're on your side. We will keep doing that. I hope more Republicans join us and we can do this bipartisan. But either way, we'll not stop fighting to make sure parents' hard work pays off for years to come. This weekend, on Saturday, we passed the American Rescue Plan that will put shots in people's arms, kids back in school, money in people's pockets, workers in jobs. Tens of millions of Americans, including more than 5 million Ohioans, are going to see money in their pockets from stimulus checks and the dramatic expansion of the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. This comes back to, as it always does in politics, as the presiding officer knows, as it does in government, comes down to whose side are you on, as this illustrates pretty well. The American Rescue Plan, we all remember, most of us remember just 4 years ago, the Trump tax plan, tax cut for the rich. And the blue here is the American Rescue Plan, which we just passed on Saturday, which the House will pass probably tomorrow, and that President Biden will probably sign this weekend. The lowest earners, the lowest 20%, saw their income go up by 20%. Under our plan, it's barely perceptible how much it went up under the Trump tax plan. But if you go to the top 1%, you can see how much their income went up, and this is to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. And the lowest earners essentially got nothing from the Trump tax plan. So you can see here the blue is how our tax bill will put money in the pockets of middle-income people, all the way up, middle-income people, working-class people, the lowest-income people, while the Trump tax plan, of course, were helping the richest people in the country. We see that middle-class and working-class and low-income families are all going to benefit from the rescue plan. This is a broad investment in the whole country, and the vast majority of people who get their income not from a stock portfolio, but from a paycheck. Contrast that with those who benefited from the McConnell-Trump tax scam. The vast majority of benefits, as we all know, went to those at the top. Again, look at the top 1%. They got more from the Washington Republican tax giveaway than anyone else. At the time, I remember the presiding officer, I think, remembers this, as he opposed that bill vigorously too. Republicans claimed it just wasn't possible to do their tax bill, wasn't possible to avoid giving tax cuts to the richest 1%. They just had to. We knew they were wrong then. This has proved they're wrong. Again, look at the purple, look at the blue, the purple, the benefits that go to the lowest, to working families, to middle-class families, working families, and low-income families. Our rescue plan gave literally zero to the top 1%. They're doing just fine. The value of their stock portfolio has soared during the pandemic. We invest in everyone else, and the people who were promised more money in their paychecks from the Republican tax scam, but never got those raises. As I said, 4 million Ohioans will get a stimulus check. That's out of 12 million people in the state. 2 million Ohio families will get at least a $3,000 child tax credit. They will get a check, $250 every month, year-round. More than 500,000 Ohio workers will get an expanded Earned Income Tax Credit. Those childless families, single people, childless people, A number of older Ohioans, not yet quite 65, will get their enhanced earned income tax credit. Over 1 million delivery drivers, more than 1 million cashiers will get an income boost. 800,000 home health aides get more money back in their pockets. These are the workers on the front lines of the pandemic. These are the people that go to work every day. They expose themselves to people whom they don't know in the course of their job. They go home at night anxious that they might be infecting their families. This is what making hard work pays off looks like. This is what investing in the country looks like. This is what a government on the side of workers and their families look like. It's about the dignity of work. It's about rewarding people that work hard. It's what we did on Saturday. It's what I said walking out of this building on the way home on Saturday was the best day of my Senate career, because we helped tens of millions of Americans. We helped millions of people in my state. We will make a difference in their lives. That's what we did on Saturday. That's what we will continue to do. Thank you, Mr. President. Over the past week, we've put money directly in the pockets of the families of 60 million American children. In Ohio, 2.1 million children, their families got hundreds of dollars each in tax cuts, money to help them keep up with the cost of raising a family, money they'll spend in the local economy. Mr. President, you know this, the largest tax cut for working families in American history ever. Stories have poured into our office from across Ohio. You're hearing those in Hawaii, all from parents who worked hard to make ends meet. They now have a little bit extra of their own money back to spend on groceries and child care and medical bills and school supplies. These tax cuts, we care about families. A lot of talk in this body about we care about families. Well, if you care about families, this is all about empowering families. Families decide how to spend these dollars. Mitch McConnell doesn't decide, Joe Biden doesn't decide, Brian Schatz doesn't decide, I don't decide how we spend these dollars. Families decide. It's dollars they've earned working hard to provide for their family. It's hard work raising children, and to how they've raised their kids. Listen to I think all of us are hearing these stories. Some on our website, some of us in town halls, we're hearing these stories. And let me just briefly tell just a handful of them. Rob from Copley, Ohio, said he's going to spend it on bills and necessities, especially necessities for my kids. Tracy said she's going to use it to pay for my children's sports fees. One mother said, my 8-year-old was able to attend a coding camp this week for the first time. She was just thrilled. We know how expensive health care is. We know how medical bills and copays and premiums eat away at families' budgets. So many parents have talked about how this will help them afford health care expenses. Leanne from Akron is going to be able to afford my daughter's medical bills. Haley said she'll use the tax cut to pay for speech therapy for her child. Susan said it will allow her to pay for my child's dyslexia tutoring. Jen said ours will be going straight, gotta love this one, ours will be going straight to the orthodontist each month. Brittany wrote that this tax cut came at a great time. She said, my son got sick with pneumonia this week. It led to an urgent care visit, breathing treatment, chest x-rays, a lot of medicine. So our payment will go to an emergency medical bills, make sure our son can thrive, has the medicine he needs. This money, another benefit that my colleagues, you may remember, Mr. President, that there were 2 votes on the child tax credit. First, an amendment to take it out. Every Republican voted to take it out. And then an amendment to pass the bill on March 6th at about this time of day, and every Republican voted against it. I know it's all about tax cuts for rich people for them, but we can get to that later. But we know another benefit of this is this is money spent in communities. I don't think I'm not getting any notes from parents saying, thank you, Senator Brown, for this child tax credit you've been working on for a decade. I'm going to put more money in my Swiss bank account. Nobody's saying that. We've gotten so many stories already how this money supports the economy and supports jobs. Katie from Brecksville, month 1, she's using it for a much-needed family vacation. Month 2, she's using it for school supplies. That supports hotel jobs and restaurant jobs and retail jobs. Lindsay said she's using it for back-to-school clothes. Again, supporting local retailers. Brittany from Butler said we'll be able to put new windows in the kids' bedrooms that will keep them cooler in the winter and in the summer and warmer in the winter. Sounds like work for a local handyman or woman or a window business. Lisa said she's spending it on diapers and school supplies. We'll put a little into starting a 529 college fund. Think about that. These families are struggling. They're going to start, I don't know for sure, but it sounds like Lisa may have a couple of children. So she gets this, they're little, so she's going to get $300 per child, so she gets $600 July 15th. She'll get $600 August 15th. She'll get $600 September 15th. She'll get $600 October 15th and November 15th. And she's decided she can now afford a few things she couldn't afford, but she's going to maybe put $100 of that every month into a 529 college fund. So her child will be, the whole idea of infrastructure is building a base, a foundation to launch children into better lifestyles, to launch children into a more productive life, to give kids opportunity. That's what this does. That's what the child tax credit does. And it's almost everybody. 92% of Ohio's kids' families are getting a tax cut every single month. So many parents mention the cost of child care. So often, over and over, we hear how this will allow parents to afford the child care that allows them to go to work. Courtney, a mother, wrote her tax cut already more than half, slightly more than half the cost of part-time daycare tuition per month here in Athens and down in Southeast Ohio. She said, it's appreciated so much, the help getting my child back into child care and keeping my husband and me in the workforce. So it comes back to one question, Mr. President. I think you know this. Whose side are you on? Whose side are you on in these fights? Are you on the side of these parents who work hard every day for their families? At a Dignity of Work roundtable in our Senate Banking Committee, Mr. President, a woman from West Virginia said, the word working and poor shouldn't be in the same sentence. The word working and poor shouldn't be in the same sentence. These are families that are working really hard. Give them a little bit of a break so they can rise above the poverty line, so they can afford some things to launch their children into more productive lives. So are you on the side of these parents who work every day? Or are my colleagues going to raise these families' taxes at the end of the year? Because this expires next year if we don't continue it. And I haven't seen any help yet on their side wanting to continue. I'm still hopeful. We remember what happened in 2017. Mr. President, you remember this. In 2017, you could walk out this door pretty much any time of day, and you could look down the hall in 2017, and you could see lobbyists lined up outside of Mitch McConnell's office, all well-dressed, all really, really well-paid, all hat in hand, some literally, some figuratively, saying, Senator McConnell, we need this additional tax break. And you know what? We spent $1.5 trillion on that tax cut. They don't want to spend $100 billion a year on these children. We spent $100 billion is, I should do the math really quick, about 8% of 1.5 trillion, something like that. I'm not doing 6%. So they'll do 1.5 trillion in tax cuts. 70% of it went to the richest people in the country, yet they don't want to do tax cuts for children that elicit these stories. I don't recall getting on my website stories, thank you, Senator Brown, even though I voted against it. Thank you for that big tax cut back in 2017. I could buy another yacht. Thank you. Or I get to go to Europe again. Thank you. We don't hear those stories. Here's the stories you hear about these children that need that tax cut. So you remember when they all lined up outside of our colleague Senator McConnell's office. You remember that tax cut. They promised it would trickle down to everyone else, and then it would create all this prosperity. Well, we know it didn't happen. They kept the money for themselves, no shock there. Corporations turned around, spent that money on shocking stock buybacks for their executives. They ended up always in the pockets of their executives. Now this year, without a single vote from Republicans in Congress, we passed tax cuts for everyone else. Pretty simple contrast. Tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. Thank you very much, as they line up down the hall. Or do you want tax cuts for working families? Every single month, we show parents and workers, every single month, these checks are coming. $300 per child if your child is from newborn to 5, $250 a month if your child's from 6 to 17. Every single month, you show we're on your side. We're putting more of your own money back into your pockets. Mr. President, I know you join in this. We will not stop fighting to make sure parents' hard work pays off. We will not stop. We will deliver on this.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.